morning. I am Kim Hayden, and this is Kim Talks All Things Real Estate, where we tackle real estate from all the different angles, because trust me, there's no just one way. Today's guest, pretty excited because we're actually going to be looking more so into the deep dive of management and how to get things done. Because, we as real estate agents, we know how diverse and complex real estate is. Everything from managing our clients to growing our business to maybe even building a team or opening a brokerage. So she's going to give us a lot of insight as to what that looks like from a management, time management, and getting stuff done. So real quick, I want everybody, please, please, please go over to www.queensofresilience.shop. This is my store online where it's, got some sass, got a fun, but please do straighten your crown, shop around, check out queensofresilience.shop. So my guest today, as a child, Haylee dreamed of becoming an astronaut, but quickly found out it involves a lot of math. So does real estate, but we can get past that. She decided to move her love of curiosity and creativity in a different direction and found some missing links along the way. She noticed too many entrepreneurs and business teams feel stressed, unfocused, and stuck, and find it challenging to keep up with the never-ending cycle of problems that seem to arise each week. The bottom line is I often are not performing at our highest potential. So thinking big, solving problems, and getting efficient has been Haylee's specialty since she was a wee kid. Finding new ways to sneak candy at night, being the go-to, can you help me friend, and always in pursuit of innovation. While growing up, taking on and beating aplastic anemia, a life-threatening autoimmune disease, she had the chance to experience life in a new light. The whole experience itself taught her to never settle for less and to live life as if there's no tomorrow. Ever since, she followed her passion and used her gift to help others become the highest version of themselves, to create more impact and innovation and income. Haylee helps business teams solve big problems in little time. She takes what would normally be a 7+ days of work and gets it done in as little as 1 hour with her speedy, fun workshops. The outcome? A happier, more productive, harmonized team ready to take on any opportunity and problem with ease. All righty, so let's get Haylee in here. Haylee, where are you? Woo!
Hello.
I'm gonna get a clap machine at some point in time, so we have some
Oh, yeah.
applause rolling. Wouldn't that be killer? Yes,
Yeah.
yay! Awesome. Welcome to the show, Haylee. Good
Thank you
morning.
so
How are
much.
you?
I'm doing fantastic. This energy this morning is amazing. I didn't even have any coffee or tea or anything, but I feel excited. So
I'm on my fourth cup, so I got us covered. So we're good.
you got me riding the whole rest of the way.
All right, so Haylee, I like to start out with who are you? And give us a little something that's not on your bio and not everybody knows, except for maybe that go-to friend that said, can you come bail me out?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. It's always a loaded question. Who am I? There's only descriptors that we can use for such a loaded question. And I would say first and foremost, I'm a creator. I've always been obsessed with learning, creating, making new things, whether it was DIY projects. I think I mentioned I was in love with magic as a kid, and so the idea of turning nothing into something was always really fascinating. And I also would say that I'm a calculated risk taker. Um, in the realm of creation, tying into that, it's the urge to want to go try new things, not just create new things, but try new things, create new experiences. And a lot of those experiences, I'm kind of an adrenaline junkie. Want to go skydiving, swim with whale sharks in the Philippines, want to do a lot of beautiful things. And so, calculated risk taking, I think, might sum up uh, a good portion of that.
Awesome. And that kind of calculated risk actually can probably sum up real estate, because real estate is an adrenaline junkie career. We try to approach it as controlled as possible, but you don't control the markets. You have to be able to pivot quickly. You can do things calculated in real estate, but the reality is at the end of the day, you're still subject to, if the city puts a new tax on, will that slow down real estate? If there's a pandemic, if there's, inflation, if they change the interest rates, like literally, we don't control the markets. We assess the markets and we work to control the client's experience. Meanwhile, in the background, it's like that duck, right? Everything's cool. Everything's cool while underneath the water. The feet are going like crazy because technology is changing. The algorithms is changing. Everything's moving on us and we've got to make it happen. So, share with me what you do.
Mhm. So the simplest answer of what I do is I run guided workshops. I'm the guide. And the reason why I do it in a workshop sense is we start with a either project or a problem or an idea. And for real estate teams, it's usually how do we, some sort of question on how do we increase the eyeballs on our listings, right? How do I get more interested buyer leads or seller leads? All of these questions about marketing and sales typically in real estate teams. So we'll start there. And our workshop process is meant to cut out what is usually in between meetings. Like we have a meeting to start the ideation session, and it's a lot of back and forth, 30 minutes to an hour. And then usually left with a few loose ends. People have to come back and forth, communicate, go back to the broker, back down. Whatever the team structure is, there's a lot going on when new projects, new ideas come about. So the workshop process is there to get everybody into a space where we're working together alone, meaning it's actually most of the time no, we're not discussing anything verbally. Everything is written out. And we're taking the brainstorming process and making it more efficient. And so taking what might take, as you mentioned, 7+ days of meetings back and forth, getting something ready to test, putting it into 30 minutes or an hour max.
Interesting. I know that like a lot of people like company when you're tackling a task. We tend to we're social. We're social animals, right?
Mhm.
That's why my laundry only gets folded once a month.
You have to do this together.
We have to do it together. So when we're looking at this, so let's break this down just a little bit. So I come to you and I say, as a real estate agent, so the three top concerns most real estate agents will vocalize is leads, right? That's number one. Number two is consistency. That's the number two. And number three is how to navigate social media. Those are the three things when realtors are polled, these are the three top concerns: leads, consistency, social media. So if I was coming and let's say we're just tackling one thing, we're tackling consistency, and we're going to do a workshop, and I've got three people on my team. What does kind of that workshop look like?
Mhm. I'm glad you mentioned that. And before I answer that specific question, you did mention something that I really enjoyed, which is those three separate kind of concerns. And they do kind of all go hand in hand together. And you mentioned, let's just for the sake of argument start with consistency. And that's a big one. It's going to be the thread through all of the work that we do as agents in any industry, really, especially real estate. And with having three major topics of conversation, I would actually pose the question, well, what's the most valuable and important right now for your specific team where they're at? Because your team might be really good at social media, but they need some help on the consistency side, like you said. Or your team might be really good and consistent, and they might be consistent in posting on social media, but for whatever reasons, it's not translating to leads. So that's where we would start. And then to answer your question, once we figure out, okay, we know that consistency is the thing that we want to focus on. let's have a workshop about it. The first thing that we start off is breaking down what's going really well. We have to start somewhere. Either if hopefully this isn't the case, but if nothing's going well, find examples of plenty of other successful teams, agents, brokerages that are doing it successfully. And start there. And so write out all those things that you're doing well, that other people are doing well. That way you can start with a positive mindset, attitude, and you can see visually, writing them out, what's on board. And then we go into the bottom section, right? Below the horizon. What is causing some frustrations? What might be slowing us down? What is a barrier to entry? What resources might we need that we don't actually have? So those things will be on the bottom. And I usually like to draw like a sunset. So we'll have the beautiful sun on the top side and the ocean and the waves. And then below is below the horizon. That's stuff that's just not working very well. So we start there. And based off of all that information, we start to slowly but surely pick, decipher, group, organize, and almost repeat the process until it's refined down to a single tangible step-by-step outcome where we're saying, okay, this person's in charge of this aspect, this person's in charge of this aspect, and it's going to be tested, this day, and this day, and we should have an outcome by the end of the week.
How often should a team that is in serious growth mode do workshops as they're moving forward?
The answer might shock you, and I'll give a little why. I would say every day. And it doesn't have to be an hour long every day. It doesn't even have to be 30 minutes long every day. And it doesn't have to involve every single person every day. Like you mentioned, a team can be 2 people. As long as there's one other person there with you, you can create that workshopping, style session where the workshop is the word, but what we're really doing is just boiling down to one singular thing. So I would say set a timer for 15 minutes. And there's something called a lightning decision jam, and I didn't make it up. I believe that it was created by AJ and Smart, so people can go look this up and they can implement it. It's a lightning decision jam. It takes as little as 30 minutes to 15 minutes, and if they want to try it for themselves, like, do that. Replace your team meetings with these instead. Usually more people will have their voice heard. So if you're more introverted, this may be really, really helpful because introvert people, maybe they don't want to speak up as often, but they have insanely great ideas. And with more extroverted people, maybe they didn't get enough time to get out their ideas. So they need that extra process of either writing it down, working with people, going through that tangible thinking process, pen to paper, to make it a bit more efficient.
So every day. So how does this look when so many people are not going back to shared workspaces? So that's a big one. Is a lot of times you don't know what your counterpart is doing because you feel there's less control because they're not within the same shared space. Are you coming across that? Like, real estate agents have always kind of had that, in the sense that we're always out in our car, we're always out and about. But even when you don't have a physical office space that you're sharing with people, what are some of the solutions around creating that sense of community that I think a workshop does give, that meeting does give? What are some solutions around that within the virtual world?
I'm glad that you brought that up because not only are we still in the midst of a pandemic, but we're also at a point, just technology wise, where there's brokerages like EXP. It's a completely virtual brokerage. I had not even heard of that until, like a year ago. I was like, whoa, this is amazing. And so it's very common for brokerages not even to have offices, even smaller local ones. They know each other. Maybe they meet up every so often, but it's not a constant coming into the office type of thing. Virtual workshops, I run those, and they're in my opinion, just as fun, if not even more fun, because you do have the capability of being in your own space, wherever that space is. And you are able to just up and leave, log off, and go do what you need to do. And that's the beauty of it. So the way that it works is there's applications and stuff that we can use. I use Miro, and so it's essentially a digital whiteboard that has sticky notes and all that stuff. So people are using the same materials just in a digital format. And I will say that there is, of course, benefit in any creative process to being in person. There's nothing that compares. But there is a very big difference between having that and then going from complete isolation to where you're barely interacting with anybody, even online, through that workshopping style, to having something that's bridged and where we're actually communicating online. And it may even, again, because we're working together alone, it creates less distractions. Nobody's right next to you, like, what are you writing down for that? Like, nobody's actually right next to you. You are in the room alone. And so if you do go on mute and everybody's set for that 5-minute timer writing down their ideas, it could make it even more effective.
Okay, so takeaways, right? So start out with what's going well. Find a positive, start on a positive note. Closing and working through that, and then having, what are the barriers, and then what are the resources. So the resources, I like how you bring that in, because that makes people be solution oriented. Too many people will focus on the negative. You're doing this wrong, it's being done wrong, and they're not like seeking solutions. They're staying within that negative space, and negative only begets more negative, right?
Mhm.
So you mentioned the lightning decision jam. What are some other tools or things that you have found helpful for you in curating these workshops?
Mm, mm. So the lightning decision jam is more of a framework that's got some exercises in it. And there's lots of AJ and Smart, that whole company, oh my gosh, they have tons of exercises for even if you didn't want to run a 30-minute workshop, but you wanted to do an individual exercise that's brainstorming just for yourself. There's lots of resources there. I would say that's the number one resource for brainstorming exercises in particular, um, in a workshop setting too. And on the flip side, I would say a lot of the curation of those ideas and getting ready to collaborate actually happens outside of work.
Yeah.
Most of it happens outside of work, I would say. And that's where my high performance kind of coaching self comes into play, where we say, you got to enjoy your life. You got to be less stressed in general to feel your best when you go to work and perform your best. If you feel good, you're going to perform well. If you feel bad, you're going to perform bad. And that's not to say that you can't get things done even though you're stressed. Lots of us, actually, stress pushes us to get things done and really, grind our gears. But as we know, and as we hear all the time, that over the long term is really doing us more harm than good. So the tools that I usually recommend for this curation process by ourselves is, because it's so individualized per person. And of course, everybody can say, go exercise, get outside, do all that stuff. Yeah, sure, those things are definitely going to help you. But you have a whole life, and I don't know your schedule, and I don't know any of that stuff. And I don't know what you like to do for fun. You might not like to bike, but you might like to scooter. And so for you, it's figuring out what brings me some peace and some joy. And for people who are really stressed, sometimes it's even hard to think of what those things are.
Yeah.
And so starting with a practice where, and it's a practice in awareness, and it's also a practice in helping you get to a place where you can start to think of these things more often and do them and implement into your life. But as you're going through life, if you think, oh wow, I'm feeling really good right now, take a second, acknowledge it, and acknowledge what is actually making you feel good. If you're out at a park and you're with your significant other or your friends or your kids or whatever that is, it's most likely spending time with that person. And so if you can spend more time with that person, then that will inevitably help you feel better more often. So finding little things that are creating those moments of peace, joy, harmony, clarity, all of that, and fun too. You want to be excited. Um, those will all help when you get back to work, because then it's a flood. It's like you open the floodgates once you switch on that kind of left brain right brain mix where they just are like flowing into each other perfectly, and all of the ideas come together. You know exactly how to execute them. That's that flow state that it brings you into after you nurture yourself.
Excellent. So yeah, and this seems to be a topic that we're hearing a lot of, is that nurturing happiness, balance, it's really interesting post pandemic or midst pandemic, however we look at this, that we've had 2 years of reset time where a lot of us have sat in our own corners twiddling our thumbs trying to figure out what is the meaning of life and how do we reinvent our businesses. And I know that over the last 10 years, so in 2006, very few people were looking online for homes, right? So if you have an agent that's been around for 20 years, there's been huge transition. And then, like you mentioned, EXP comes on in 2009 and then really breaks into the scene in 2015 as this all virtual, right? So there's some real interest in, and yet the homeowner and real estate is very much still real. It is still in the real world, in a physical space. So, real quick, folks, I want to ask everybody, please, please, please go out there, like, subscribe, comment, and share. Just take a moment. It doesn't hurt. I'm not going to be sending you, questions to buy soap for me or anything like that. There is no pain here. Just a bit of Kim. So please like, subscribe, comment, share. Help us grow this conversation so we are still here in a year. All right. So, Haylee, question. Now, this is where I like to dive into the why, right? And I think I want to do this a little bit differently. Usually I ask, why do you do this, right? Um, but I think I want to spin this just a wee bit and talk about, I'd like you to give me a case study, somebody that you have gone in and served for 6 months or a year through these workshops, and, give me kind of a start point and an end point, what succeeded and why. Why? I'd like to break this down a little bit.
Mm, good question. So it's actually kind of hard to answer, and I'll be transparent with why is with the workshops that we do and the type of coaching that is it also is a teaching tool, right? Like once you run the workshop, you actually have the tools to run it again. People bring me back, of course, because A, they don't want to learn how to do it and teach their teams and all that stuff, but B, because of the guide that's helping them through. So to answer your question, I usually don't work with them that long in advance for workshops specifically. If I do, it's more of a consulting role that I start to take on. And so the actually earliest example that I have is when I was still living in Seattle, Washington. I was working on the sales and marketing side of things for this Brazilian jiu-jitsu company, and this owner who had owned, he at the time he had two, and then he had just opened a third one while we were working together, which was really cool to see. Um, and the where we started was, and I want to answer this in a way that answers kind of the principle of what you're asking in this
Yeah.
question. When I started working with him, social media is social media. It's pictures, it's videos, it's value. We want to get that across to people. Um, if you're a one-man show or a one-woman show, it's just you running it and you're putting yourself out there, that's a whole different story. That's not about marketing. That's not about social media. That's about you, shedding some layers, getting a bit vulnerable, and really figuring out how can I help these people while sharing enough of myself that I feel whole and comfortable and satisfied. And so where we had started with him and his journey of creating content, we were doing also paid advertising and kind of working through what strategies would work there. It was mainly one of confidence. Like you could really see his confidence shine. Like he's doing videos all the time now. I don't think he had ever shot a video before we had started working together, and we don't work together anymore, but my goodness, I see videos of him all the time on his Instagram. He's grown his following to, he's in the double digits now. And before it was, he had combined his, it had allowed him to combine his personal coaching. So he was a coach in addition to teaching jujitsu and all that stuff. And it had allowed him to bring more of his personal brand and actually align that into getting him to a more successful place than he even thought possible. His intention wasn't really to grow his personal brand when he had first met me and we started working together. It was to grow those gyms and it was to help those families. And he did do that. And so after figuring out like, oh, whoa, I can do this part of for myself as well. And you could tell he was really passionate about it. Had always done like bodybuilding and coached other people, had great success. But as soon as he started really putting himself out there and feeling that own confidence, the floodgates just came in. And so I can only imagine that the main transformation is one of confidence and knowing that not only can you put yourself out there, but you can actually make money off of what you love most, which is what I think any of us want.
I think that's the message of today. And why does something like that resonate with you? Why is that important to you?
The story I always share is that, so I was always in love with music as a kid. My dad bought me my first guitar, and ever since then, I was like, hooks. Didn't want to be on stage though. Found out in high school I had played in some bands in like middle school, high school age, and then wanted to be behind the scenes and produce music. Again, back to that creation. How did it happen? And so after high school, I was working at a recording studio in Seattle, Washington. And they had done, Nirvana, the Foo Fighters, Macklemore, Soundgarden, Heart, just an incredible place to learn and work. And so we had amazing musicians come in, and we also had musicians who were just from around the Seattle area and wanted to make their music heard. And it was heartbreaking for me to struggle to pay for everything myself while trying to make what I loved work. And it's heartbreaking to see almost everybody that came in there struggling to do the same thing and putting their hard-earned dollars that they worked at, some fitness, 24-hour fitness or Jimmy John's or wherever they worked, to put it into this only to make nothing off of it. When I knew that if people heard it, it would change. Like music is the immediate change in
Well,
somebody's
and
physiology.
Macklemore, oh my God. Like
Yeah,
that's,
yeah,
I love that. I mean, now
yeah,
I've got, I've got a thrift shop just like,
yeah.
already going in my head, right? But
Mhm.
so you got to meet some of these people at their kind of their origin level, or like.
I got to meet, so I didn't meet the Foo Fighters or anybody from Nirvana or anything
Yeah.
like that. I met Macklemore in passing one time when he happened to be at the studio. Um, but what had really, ask your question again because I want to answer it in the right way.
So you're talking about, so strip away the big names. We say the
Yeah.
big names because they're the names people recognize. And I just got kind of starstruck when I heard
Yeah.
Macklemore because absolutely love him. Um, but so when we're talking about the other artists who are coming in who are doing, and you were watching
Mm.
them work at Jimmy John's to get this done. And we know statistically what, people make if they're at the top, but what most people don't realize is if you're still in that awareness space, are people aware of what you offer? You don't make a lot of money. It's like the average real estate agent. Most people, they watch Selling Sunset and they
Yep.
assume all real estate agents must be millionaires. And the reality is, the average real estate agent in the United States makes $46,000 a year. And that average, and the statistically, 87% of real estate agents, when they get their license, will no longer be in business after 36 months. So you got a 13% chance of survival. So how are you going to not only survive, but get at least to the minimum standard of living of 75K,
Yeah.
right? So you're just saying that you would see people come in and record, and they spend all their money being in a space of what they're passionate about, but they go out and have to work and get the money. And that was part of your bringing this in of how do you work better, smarter, more efficiently, and get more work done in less time.
Yeah. And how do you, if you want, turn what you're really passionate about into an income so that that work that you're actually doing is producing something for you? Because often we're spending time doing so many things, but those things aren't producing what we want.
Absolutely. Um, you know, so I mean, every industry has similarities, right? And so and you've
Mhm.
moved, but your job is portable.
Yes.
So have you found that with a physical move that you've had more opportunity, or is it everything still kind of the same? Or where's your kind of your projections on what you're doing?
Yeah, it's interesting because I moved in from Seattle to Florida, Southwest Florida in 2019, like right before good old coronavirus. And so that changed a lot in just business in general. And so I don't know if it was the move and culturally, like where I'm living now is just different, or if it was the pandemic changing the way that businesses work and that people work together. I haven't noticed too much of a difference as far as the people that I'm working with. I do find that I gravitate towards online and doing virtual coaching workshops, things of that sort. And I guess I haven't put too much thought into why that is, because sometimes they are in state, and sometimes they're not. I think people are realizing that A, this technology is amazing and it's been around for a while, so we have the option, why not use it?
Yeah.
But B, if it can integrate into our life in a way that's not inhibiting it, it's actually making it better. Me being sort of an introverted person myself, but still loving to hang out with people and meet new people. This is this virtual way of connecting with people is no longer, there's no limitations because it doesn't matter where they live. And so, if anything, I think it's diversified the people that I work with. I'm gonna talk next week with somebody who's in Johannesburg, South Africa, and talk to people in India. I had somebody on my team from a different business who was in some small island in Madagascar, and just all really cool stuff. Yeah,
Now you can say you actually know somebody from Madagascar. That's awesome.
yeah,
I mean, and it's funny because all these, I think because of media, we know more about the world. And then with having social media and the online tools, it's brought the world together.
exactly.
So, um, books, I always like to bring this around because this is, we need to learn. We need to constantly learn. And I'm curious as to what books you're reading and you would recommend.
hmm I am currently reading Your Money or Your Life, um, and that is by Vicki Robinson. And that one's actually sitting right there on my desk. I also have some ones that are in queue, right? I have Richard Branson's book. I have some Seven Habits for Highly Successful People. That one I haven't read yet, but classic, of course. So there's those. But really, the one that comes to mind first when I think of what book has changed my perspective on life and business, and that I can actually implement into my life and business. And it's really quick, simple, and easy to read. And I would read it every week to a month, is The Seven Spiritual Laws of Success by Deepak Chopra. That book
Excellent.
is really good, and I think if, it's not even really about spirituality in a sense. I think there's way more practical application to our real world than maybe others would give it credit for, but, I listened to it, it's an audiobook too, so if you go for a run or if you go for a drive, you can listen to the whole thing in, like, an hour.
I'm actually going to download that today. I've got my
Yes.
Audible account and I have like 14 credits right now. So
Perfect.
uh, I've got one for you that I think you will love. Have you listened to Atomic Habits by James Clear?
Yes, love that book.
Love
How could
that
I
book.
forget that book?
That guy, James Clear, energy. Oh my
Yes.
goodness. I would love to be in a room with him because I bet you he's just infectious. Like,
Yes.
well, not in the bad way. Not like I guess I
Not the
gotta watch how I
coronavirus way.
say that in today's world. But I sorry. Sorry, James. No, I'm not implying
Oh my
anything.
gosh.
Please, nobody take anything out of context. That's not what I was implying. I was saying that because he's all about the principles of habits, and that's really in alignment with what you're talking about. Is
Yeah,
creating a habit that could create habits. So creating that habit of having that not that meeting, creating that space that can allow for new habits to form so you can circumvent the erroneous amounts of time that we put into stuff that really are not the revenue generating activities, right? These tend to be time sucks, right? Things that just weigh you down. Um, Anything that I haven't asked you up to this point that you would love to share?
as you were talking more about Atomic Habits, I had thought immediately of Andrew Huberman and the Huberman Lab podcast. I think that that's a really good resource for people. It takes neuroscience and our body's chemistry, and essentially Andrew Huberman puts it in a way that's practical knowledge. We don't necessarily need to know the names of all the neurons in our brain and where things are located, but if we can understand what makes those habits, just like you were saying in James Clear's book, he touches on a lot of that
Yeah.
neurology. And if we can start to work with our own body to make those habits easier, beautiful. So he talks about sleep, stress, working out, and also productivity habits, shift work. So if you work really late at night or other countries, things like that. So really cool podcast.
Awesome. Okay. Where can people connect with you? And by the way, I love your middle name. Is it Kalani?
Kalani, yes.
Is that by chance maybe Hawaiian or where is that from?
Hawaii, yes.
I love
Means sent
it.
from heaven.
I love it. Okay. So where can we find you?
You can find me right here on LinkedIn. You can find me on Facebook, and you can also find me on my website, hkalaniconsulting.com.
Perfect. Okay. So close us out. Quote or affirmation that you pull on even when the days are dark.
Mm, I'll do both, if that's okay. Quote,
Perfect.
favorite quote. Everything that you want is on the other side of fear. And my affirmation is I am gratitude. Me, the embodiment
That's
of that gratitude.
that's beautiful.
Thank
That's
you.
beautiful. And what a great way to start my Thursday. I appreciate you sharing your time.
Thank you so much, Kim. I appreciate you inviting me on.
Excellent. All right, folks, that's it for today. We try and keep it right and tight because we know that you're going to go out and rock the rest of the day and make it amazing. So close some deals, get those leads, get creative in finding your leads. Don't just like sit back and wait and hope that, Zillow's going to send you something. Go out there, connect. They say your net worth is in your network. So get out there, meet some people, and make magic happen. Check out queensofresilience.shop. Oh, and by the way, you can go to resilientgift.com and get our monthly magazine for free. We don't even ask for a credit card, so there's no bill. There's nothing that's going to happen. I mean, come on. This is the best deal you're going to get today. So again, I'm Kim Hayden, and I am super grateful that you took time to share your most precious commodity, your time, with us. So again, until next time, have a good one.